We're back out here once again, and today we're talking about some amazing baits for the month of October that I think you're really going to like. Stick around, you don't want to miss this one.
That one. Oh, that's nice. That's a big one, honey. Oh my God, that's a big one. That's a toad. Whoa.
And here is this video's featured comment. Congratulations! If you would like to have a chance to have your comment featured in an upcoming video, all you've got to do is leave a comment. And now, on with the video. Welcome back to Lowbrow Fishing. And here we are, the month of October already. This year has just flown by. Now, for much of the country, that means cooler temperatures, especially at night. Here in South Mississippi, it's still very hot. It's in the 90s right now. But even for us at night, we've gone down into the upper 60s as far as our temperature goes. That changes those bass. It activates them. That fall transition turns into the fall feed. And every single time I head out to the water, and I'm going 4 and 5 times a week, I'm noticing more and more activity from those bass, which in turn leads to more and more bites. Now, during the month of September, spinnerbaits, crankbaits, those were working really well for me. But the bass have kind of gotten away from that just a little bit, and I've had to adjust my presentation. The other day, the wife and I went out, and she told me she wanted to fish this. This is a black blue flake stick bait from Cream. This is a Waco rig, 1/0 EWG, and I've got that 16th ounce nail weight in there. We had bluebird skies. We had about 3 or 4 feet of visibility, and we're fishing about 4 feet of water. This is what she wanted to tie on. And you say, well, that's not a very good color for that condition. It should be a natural color. It should be a lighter color. But she was thinking ahead. All that vegetation in the water, all that hydrilla everywhere, the submergent hydrilla, the emergent hydrilla, all of that was casting shadows under the water, which, of course, you wanted to have a bait that stood out in that darker water. And I'm telling you what, on her very first cast, well, she hooked into a nice 1.5-pound bass. I didn't even have my first bait tied on. I hadn't even made a cast yet. I was trying to get my camera going just in time for her to record her getting that fish. I barely got it in time, and you can see it's a really nice fish. So obviously she had something up her sleeve. Now the funny thing about it is you can say, lowbrow, that was a fluke. You can always catch a bass if you're in the right area. It really doesn't matter what bait you have. But I'm telling you what, I had just gotten tied on. I had a white zoom worm, a trick worm tied on a Waco rig, because I wanted to do what you consider the normal thing, right? Have that bright color, have that standout color in that more clear water to attract those bass. But on her second cast, on her very second cast, she hooked into another fish. Not in the same area. She'd cast that way. On her first cast, she cast this way on her second cast. So she's casting many yards apart, and she ended up hooking into another bass. And while it wasn't exceptionally huge, what it was information. That says that she was onto something. Those bass wanted that darker presentation. And I didn't get anything on that zoom worm, so I ended up trading out to a June bug yum dinger and started getting bites on that. But that was pretty crazy. So you have to think about the conditions. You have to think about it from those bass perspective. You know, under the water, it might be clear, but there might be a lot of vegetation which casts shadow on a sunny day. So even though it's sunny, even though the water might be clear, you still want to go with a darker bait just so those bass can see that worm, because you're going with a very visual presentation. And I know a lot of guys say, well, that Waco rig, that's just a weightless Texas rig worm. But it's not. It's more like a cross between a wacky rig and a jerkbait. When it falls, it does that wacky rig shimmy, which is great. You get a lot of bites on that. But you can also tap it and twitch it, and it goes from side to side. It darts around very much like a jerkbait would, very much like a fluke would. And that's a great thing because you've got two methods that you can really use to attract those bass. And it turned out to be just the ticket in that back pocket. A little bit later in the day, that wind started to pick up. We started to have a little bit more current. Fishing a finesse style presentation wasn't going to work as well. We started to get a little bit of chop on the water. So we decided we were going to move along to these guys here. I tied on a jerkbait for me. She had a jerkbait on. And it wasn't a couple of casts in with this Yozuri jerkbait, and I was getting some really nice fish, getting some really nice bites. They were kind of schooled up along that weed edge near the bank where there was a little bit of a drop off. But as the day progressed and that sun was beating down overhead straight from above, those bass, it seemed like that jerkbait bite died off a little bit. But what I found out was those bass had actually pulled off a little bit. And a regular standard jerkbait is not going to get down but about 5 feet, 6 feet. So I needed something else. I needed something that was going to get down to those fish and do the job. And that was this guy right here. This is a Smithwick Perfect 10. This is a large jerkbait. This is a bigger size jerkbait. And yes, I'm not throwing this on a spinning combo. This is actually my casting combo. 12-pound braid, 7-foot medium heavy. This is actually a 7:5-to-1 gear ratio rod. Now, normally, I'm not a big fan of throwing a jerkbait on a bait cast. With this, you kind of have to. It's almost like fishing a deep diving crankbait. There's a lot of pull whenever you're working that bait. But again, I cast it out there and I started to work it fairly deep off that drop off beyond where that weed edge was. And well, it wasn't very long and this happened. Well, you got grass. How long has that been on there? Huh? So a while, okay.
Got one. Oh, that's nice. That's a big one, honey. Oh my God, that's a big one. That's a toad. Whoa. He's not huge. I foul hooked him, but he's still pretty good. Come on, dude. Buddy, I got you all kinds of wonky. He went for that back hook. He was trying to go for the back hook and swung around, got caught in the side. Yeah. But, you know what we call that? We call that a fish catch. £1.25. Yeah, right at £1.25. That hook kind of got him a little bit, but he's still there. Nice, beautiful fish. He's got a little tummy on him. He's feeding up. You have yourself a good one, buddy. We really do appreciate it. There he went. All right. Love to see it.
So that was a pretty good bass. It was just exactly what I thought had happened. Those bass had pulled off into a little bit deeper water. They hadn't vacated the area. They hadn't gone away. They were still there, but when that sun came out and was overhead, those bass dropped off just a little bit deeper along that bank. And that Perfect 10 deep diving jerkbait was just exactly what I needed. So, and I worked it the same way that I would work one of these guys. You know, these jerkbaits, they really come into their own this time of year. Now, jerkbait is a great bait all year long. But right now, a jerkbait is a great bait. Now, you can work these even in more calm and slack water. You just have to adjust your presentation a little bit. Whenever I have some calmer water, I'm actually working these a bit faster. I can get away with working these a little bit faster because it's a more visual presentation, and I don't necessarily want the bass getting a good look at it. I want them to see it. I want them to see it moving, but I actually work it a bit quicker. I do very few pauses, and the pauses that I do use, I'm not very long with, a couple of seconds at the most. But whenever I have some wind and I have some current, I'm actually slowing that jerk bait down. It doesn't matter if I'm using a smaller one or if it doesn't, if I'm using this bigger one here. Whenever I was working this one, I actually was working it pretty slowly for me, because I have a tendency to work jerk baits pretty quick. I actually slowed this down because we had a good bit of wind. We had a good bit of current. I wanted those bass to have a better chance to get a look at it, because that wave action on the surface is going to break up that light, which means it's going to show that bait differently underwater. And again, even though that water was relatively clear, I went with a deeper jerkbait, a darker jerkbait, because I wanted to stand out, and that really paid off. Now, the last presentation that I've had a lot of success with is, well, a good old jig. This Booyah, and this is a rattling jig. It's got some rattles on it. It's got that rattle skirt on there that I really like. And I've got a Guggen Kraken Craw on here. And I wanted a little bit brighter tail. It's kind of a little bit of chartreuse in it, so it kind of stands out. Again, I'm fishing in that deep hydrilla. I'm fishing in the dark places of the water, even though it's not exceptionally shallow. And this stands out on that bottom. It stands out in the background. And these things right here, I'm telling you what, these things have been great trailers. I've used these for jig trailers all year, and they make exceptional jig trailers. Whatever you say about Guggen baits, whatever you say about the Guggens, whatever, this, for me, has been a really exceptional jig trailer this year. Now, I haven't fished it just on a Texas rig or anything like that, but putting it on a jig, it's worked out really well. They're kind of small, so I don't have to cut them down, and they still offer that compact presentation that's really nice to have. I like that flat head on the bottom, but this is a wedge tip, a more wedge style jig head with that line tie in line with the hook, so it comes through that vegetation much, much better. I could have used a football jig, but I would have been pulling gunk every single time. So this was the deal for the job. This is a 1/2 ounce jig. A 3/8 ounce jig would have also worked, but I was only fishing at most about 10 or 12 feet. So this did the job just fine. And a jig bite is really starting to come into its own. Again, you can fish it whenever you've got a little bit of wind. You can fish a jig whenever you've got slick calm. It's very versatile. You don't have to fish it, when it's slick calm, and you don't have to only fish it whenever you've got a lot of chop on the water. They're one of those baits. They're heavy enough you can get it down on the bottom, and the wind isn't going to blow it around if you've got the right weight on that jig. Drag them along the bottom, nice and smooth, nice and slow, nice and smooth. I like to drag it along, and then I like to just tap it. Once I get the slack pulled out of it, I like to just tap it just a little bit, just to get those rattles activated and maybe make that bait just kind of wiggle a little bit and get those claws flapping just a little bit. I've had great success doing that. And as we move into the month of October, deeper into October, the jig bite is only going to pick up from there. And we know as we go into November and December and into the winter, a jig is exceptional during those cold weather months. So I would start tying them on now. And you can even go with something smaller. A bank angler, you can go with a 1/4 ounce bitsy bug or a bitsy flip. I love using those from the bank. I love using them from the boat. I'll put them in shallow water, fish them right around docks, fish them right around laydowns, fish them right around flooded brush. And I like to take like a 1/2 of a stick bait, just cut it in half and use that as my trailer. And I've had so much success doing that. So try a smaller bitsy bug or a bitsy bit jig, or, a finesse jig or something like that. Put that 1/2 a stick bait or a Ned bait on there. You'll be amazed at just how well it works. It's a great fish catching tool. And those are the baits that I'm working right now. Super simple, super easy. Keep it simple, keep it easy, and adjust what you're seeing based on the conditions that you see whenever you're out on the water. So there you have it. Fishing during the month of October can be very good. But remember, when you're choosing your baits, base it on the bass's perspective and the conditions that you're seeing. Once you do that, you'll be amazed at how many fish you can actually catch. Thanks for watching Lowbrow Fishing. We'll catch you in the next one.